So, before we continue, I just want to make sure everyone is relatively clear on what I shared this morning. So, if you have a question, specifically about what I shared, about the content of this weekend so far, feel free to raise your hand if you want some clarification on something. Yes, do we have a microphone? There you go.
Hi. I noticed in the lunch break that I felt disempowered and frustrated because I took your words. What I heard was there is no joy because in this life it's suffering.
Yes.
Please check it. And why I ended up after years of Advaita teaching with you was because of the empowerment part and because I noticed for myself what I'm really looking for is bliss.
Yeah.
So, and now I took it like no pleasure, no pain. It's this neutral stuff sitting on the couch in meditation posture and trying to be aware of awareness, and I felt like frustrated because, to be honest, I want to experience this bliss in my life, and I don't care about in what circumstance or with what experience or objects or whatever, but this is my motivation, and maybe you can help me to find back to my inspiration.
Wait a sec. So, I don't get the last part. I get your question, but now you suddenly want me to help you find your inspiration. That sounds
I
like a
still
different.
feel in this frustration
Okay.
frequency, so I took the
I see.
chance to raise my question because I want to step out of this.
So what is the core of your frustration? State it like a belief. I feel frustrated because I'm believing something that's not true. I'm defining these teachings in a way that aren't true for me.
There is no hope.
Okay, cool. That's your definition?
Yeah, that's the belief behind.
And what's hope to you, and why do you need it?
There is an escape. There's there's another belief comes with it that in future something will change or something.
Which you like, right? You want that.
I want it now, not in the future.
So you don't want hope?
No, to be honest, not.
Okay.
I want realization. I want liberation now and not in the future.
So then why are you frustrated
it's interesting.
with seeing there's no hope? So what do you really want?
What gives me bliss is any form of liberation.
Okay. So then you realize that has nothing to do with pleasure or pain or any circumstance. Whether you sit on a couch or you're riding on your bike or you're experiencing great pleasure or great pain, you understand that liberation has nothing to do with that. It's not dependent on anything.
Yes, I understand.
So that's good news. Why are you frustrated? Sounds like we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So your frustration is it a memory, an association of when you had a unenlightened view of enlightenment?
Yes, I guess it comes from a belief that enlightenment is a hard work.
It is.
It was hard work for me to go through all these steps of knowing myself and accepting and going through traumas and whatever. And then I said to myself, the hard work is over now.
Oh, that's good.
Now it's time for joy. And then I came here.
How long ago did you have this decision?
1 week.
Well, you had a week of joy.
So
Consider yourself lucky. So yeah, you can suffer joyfully. I mean, for me, it's very joyful to realize that there is no hope in life, that life is suffering. That's very blissful realization for me because it keeps me anchored in the truth. And that's where the bliss comes from. It's not in chasing appearances and forgetting myself. So to remember that the appearances will always, to a greater or lesser extent, mean suffering. Even pleasure is suffering to me. When indulged in from a point of view of being identified with it, or seeking it, or chasing it, then it becomes painful, right? It is inherently neutral, but we make it painful or pleasurable by our definitions. But life, if you look at it, is suffering. Life as we know it, life as we define it, life as we see it, based on forms, based on seeking, based on chasing things, etc., being lost in the perceptions that we have every day. That is suffering. Now, life itself is not suffering. Life itself is pure joy, pure bliss, pure love. But life as you know it is always going to be suffering. To believe that something that's not true is always going to make you suffer at some level. So when I say life is suffering, I I feel this big joy welling up in my heart. It's like, oh yes, there's no hope.
I feel
Yes.
like tears coming up.
You feel what?
Tears coming up.
Te-
So it's
fears.
and not blissful tears.
Or
like,
tears. Okay. Uh-huh.
um, there were so much beliefs around this suffering part, hard-working part,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe I just felt thrown back into this
Ah.
belief system.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to expose it.
Mm-hmm. That's good. So I would say follow your joy.
Thank you for repeating that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's very joyful to see life has no hope. It's like the most blissful sight because you're instantly free. Because you instantly stop chasing. You instantly stop trying to be something. That's joy to me. Maybe not to you. Or maybe it is, but you just have a few mixed definitions mixed in with a negative association of a past path that wasn't clear enough to you. You didn't have a super clear definition of the path. It is hard work, but that doesn't mean it's not joyful. It can be experienced as very light work. But it is hard work in the sense of it requires a lot of reminding yourself, right? It's not hard work like you gotta like pull heavy logs or like you have to suffer and suffer and suffer. Hard work doesn't mean you have to suffer. It just means you have to. Well, first of all, you don't have to do anything. I'm describing what's possible, and high possibilities require great dedication. Hmm. And it also doesn't mean that it's not simple. It also doesn't mean that it's not essentially simple. Also doesn't mean that it's not essentially natural to who you are and it's already available to who you are. All these things are implied in my teachings. It's always already here. The hard work is simply, here's the thing, it requires hard work because you're ignorant of life being suffering. The more aware you are of the fact that all of life is suffering, suddenly it will not be as hard work because you won't be deluding yourself with all these other things. It's only hard work because you're battling your own desires all the time. You're always in conflict with what you want. You want bliss and peace, but you also want this to be cleaned up, or your door to be shut, or your business to go differently, or your son to behave differently, or whatever it is. So you want peace and bliss and joy, but you also want to find that inside of the forms of life, right? Because you have been training yourself to associate with form so much, the hard work is simply the process of of reversing that stream. But it becomes easy if you have a realization of the fact that it's not worth chasing what you thought you had to chase in order to attain happiness. Now it becomes easy. That's why I love the realization that all of life is suffering. And when you reach your absolute peak of pleasure, give it away. Stop enjoying it. See if you can do that. Because if you can, that means you're greater than even that highest peak of joy. And you will see that when you stop enjoying. Doesn't mean block. When I say stop enjoying, I don't mean collapse and resist. I mean stop being the enjoyer of it. Stop owning the experience. Stop like, rah, this is me. Look at me, amazing. Oh, so much pleasure. Stop doing that. So you allow the experience to be there, but you give it back to God. The joy and the pain, it all belongs to the illusion of consciousness, energy, isn't love.
I understand. And this one part of the sentence, allow the joy to be there, it's a step for me.
That's great. I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah, and then
when you allow it to be as it is, you are already distancing yourself from it in a good way. Not like disassociating or blocking, but just like seeing, becoming more spacious than the joy. And then you see that the real joy is actually what you are. It's not the thing that you poured it into. That's why it's so cool. If you can give away that most pleasurable moment that you were looking forward to for 15 years, and now it seems to actually be here, doesn't mean you can't like enjoy it. Doesn't mean you can't be like, but then see if you can like transcend that right in that moment. It's just a challenge. You don't have to do it. Maybe it's not a healthy challenge for everyone. But once you're balanced, you know yourself, you accept yourself, you know you can never truly be separate from the Creator, there's no danger in giving away your pleasures. You can do it with smaller pleasures if you feel more comfortable with that. And don't do it when you finally attain the thing you really want. Then you can really enjoy it and embody it. But you'll see it turns to suffering. Whereas if you give it away, there's this amazing grace that comes over your system. Because you literally chose God over pleasure and outcome and the temporary. So something opens up in your energy system that allows you to experience true bliss, true freedom. And then the thing you wanted for so long suddenly pales in comparison. But you can't do that if you really believe in the thing that you're enjoying and that you're the enjoyer of it and that you accomplished it. Maybe you need it for a minute, depending on what your history is like. Maybe it's a good balance to have that every once in a while, but it's not the ultimate stability of owning your freedom. You're still giving away your power. So I'm not speaking about a joyless existence. I'm just saying that life as you know it, the form, the dream, does not contain joy. You can't drill into this floor and find a nugget of joy. Ta-da! Here's joy. Who wants it? Sell it for like crazy amount. You can't do that because joy does not exist in this world. Joy is what you are. So you got to turn your attention to where you came from. You got to open up to that. Now you could do that through generating joyful experiences and then completely surrendering to that and opening up. But here's the thing. What I was trying to address with that is there's a difference. It's subtle, but there's a difference between being the enjoyer of it and fully allowing the sensations to like, yes. Or like when you're painting and you're still entranced, you're still giving your power away, but because it's there, it seems like you're fully surrendered to it, but you're actually still claiming it as your own. You're still owning it. You're still holding it, holding on to it. You're still identifying with it. Going along with the sensations is not the same as surrender. Surrender means letting everything go, including the joy that's appearing inside of the space of letting go. So you can still perceive the joy, but now it's like you're beyond the experiencer of joy. You're beyond the enjoyer of joy. Joy belongs to the enjoyer. But if you're beyond it, then you're untouchable. And that freedom is even greater. That joy is where all joy comes from. It's just projected in form. But form can never give you joy. There's literally nothing in this world that I could give to you. Who is you anyway? Is it your body? Like, would you have to consume it? Would you, it's just silly. So there is no joy in life except when you decide that you are joyful. So your mommy and daddy taught you that if someone says this to you, or there's a situation that works out in that way, or you're successful with this job, then when that's the case, that means it's good. It means you're safe. It means you've made it. It means you're worthy. It means you're da-da-da-da. So now when you dream on and you dream on and you dream on, and 10, 15 years later, suddenly you dream all those components in alignment with what your parents taught you is joy, or is happiness, or is accomplishment. And now that it lines up, something in your brain fires up. It's like, oh, wait a second, this is joyful. And so you feel joy. Because you define that the thing in front of you, the painting in front of you, means something really good for you or about you. Means that you're worthy, finally, you're worthy of love, of existing, of being included, of belonging to creation. So you feel joy because you decide that it's a good moment. It's got nothing to do with the job. It's got nothing to do with the person in front of you. It's got nothing to do with riding a horse. So the joy, the happiness of what you are, it's self-provided, it's self-allowed. Some moments you allow a lot of it, and other moments you block it off. But you're always connected to that flow. Life itself, aliveness, life itself, being alive, is Satchitananda. It's love, bliss, existence, consciousness, beauty, freedom, eternity, changelessness. But life as the dream doesn't contain anything. We always give it the definition that we give it. And a great practice is to give away your suffering and to give away your pleasures. Then you really attain a sense of awareness that's so profound that you stop chasing things. And the feeling of embodiment and mastery overcomes you. And then more and more joy comes in, but it comes in from the back door. It doesn't come in through the front door. That's all. Life's still very joyful. In fact, more so. It's only painful because you chase it. When you stop chasing it, it turns to bliss. How do you stop chasing it? You realize it sucks. No matter what you do, it's always going to suck. Hope, in the sense of like, it's going to get better, it's going to get better, it's going to get better, is a good understanding or mantra to have, just like it is going to get better. No, actually, it is going to get better. But if you really want to shift deeply into allowing the attention to desire the creator within, and not being so like, distracted and partial. If you want to feel that wholeness, if you're tired of scattering yourself and like chasing yourself, then it's really helpful to see like, just stop for a minute. Where am I going? And then what? So, okay, what do I really want? Then you say it, like, okay, this is going to happen. I'm going to be really joyful. And then just add the question, and then what? Good point. When you have what you want, then what? Just think about the things you want to attain. That's train that goes into linear time, like future, becoming. I'm becoming this, I'm becoming that. That tension, that self-destroying. Constipation. And then what? Imagine actually having it. And then what? Same with enlightenment. And then what? Let's say you get it.
Maybe I have an example. I really enjoy riding motorbike. But if I don't ride in wintertime, December, January, February, I'm not missing it. But I know I will have again big joy if it's possible again.
Exactly. Great. It's just like that. So the winter time and the summertime begin to coexist.
Yeah. Thank you,
So
Bentinho.
you're always in the winter time. You always don't care if it happens. But because of that, it's actually always summertime. Because you can always generate similar experiences, but they'll come naturally. Boom, boom. And it's like they're happening. It's like you're watching it through your binoculars. It's like, oh yeah, that's such a great experience. Look at that cigar lounge. Man, I really set that up just right. Had it been 1 inch to the left, it would have been out of balance. Fuck, that's a great fucking launch. I want to just sit there. Great. But you're here, you're vast. You're not, oh, you know. So when you give away your joys and your pleasures, you're going to generate that distance, the true distance, the metaphysical distance of the disidentifying with what you're not. And then more and more you're rested. More and more of your consciousness is aware of the I, which is stable, profound, it's solid like a mountain, doesn't move. It's always there, and it radiates from the inside out. And it comes with joy and bliss and clarity and intelligence and skillfulness and a natural flow. You don't have to think about how you do things or what you do. They just happen. They just flow, and you're not interrupting it anymore because you're not putting a barrier there of this tiny little mind-based entity that goes, but I want it this way, and if I don't, then I won't be happy. If you just give up all that, then you're still going to create it. It's just going to be created through you. You're not going to be in the way of it, you see. And then when it happens and how it happens, you build less and less attachment up to that, and you build less and less walls on your energy system. So more of the intelligence can begin to operate your body, your mind, your movements, and your intuition gets heightened. You just start moving like as if you're one with everything. It's much more joyful that way. So to give away your greatest moments of joy as a challenge, you don't have to always do it, but try it sometime. And you'll see your attachment to that joy when you ask yourself to let go of it in the moment. Because in that moment, you just want to be completely asleep. Now it's finally here. No, wake up. You're not your joy. Wow, I'm much deeper than my joys. I'm also much deeper than my pains. I'm also much deeper than my neutrality of the couch potato meditating. I'm also not that. You are what the meditator in you is trying to reach. When you think you go sit down for meditation, it's not you. It's the body that's sitting down and the mind that has an idea that it's not there yet. And then it goes and meditates, and it meditates and meditates. And when it realizes itself beyond the mind and the body, it's like, oh, I was already here. It was the body, mind that was trying to reach me. And I thought I was that. I thought I was the thoughts and the attempt and the meditation and the body. You are what you're trying to reach. You're not that which is trying to reach you. You're already you. But this is a seeing that requires some meditation. For most people. Does this make you feel a little more inspired about the journey?
Yes,
Or
thank you.
yeah, you feel good? Okay, good.
Yes, so my question is about the previous slide, the previous picture.
Whoop. Still got some attachments left here. This one?
Not this one. No.
I wasn't done with this one yet, by the way. I might continue there after the Q&A. This one?
Yes. So you say true freedom is not in this dream.
Yes.
So the absolute. why is he creating this dream if it's already true freedom?
Well, you got to ask him.
I am.
Thank you. You know, it all starts and ends in mystery, but if you need an explanation for something at that level, I would say it's desire. Some people call it a mistake. Some say it's a mistake. And it's got nothing to do with the one infinite creator. It's just a mistake of the ego, somehow. There's one way of explaining it, and it can be quite effective for certain people to sort of abruptly make that distinction between the truth and the non-truth, and not give it any sentimental sort of narrative. But have you read The Law of One?
No.
No? Okay. Do you feel any resonance towards it? Or?
Yes.
Because there's a lot of these types of questions that get answered. So it might be worth it for more in-depth things. Basically, the idea is that the one infinite creator desires to know itself. And the only way for it to know itself is in contrast to what it's not. And so it dreams, creates a dream. And the beginnings of that awakening start in a very rudimentary way, which is described in Love 1 as the first density life forms, such as rock, water, air. And those elemental life forms of first density, if you will, form the vehicle to begin for nothingness, if you will, to begin to awaken to self. Water, for hundreds of thousands of years, slams into the rock, waking it up slowly, shaping it. Fires changing the landscape. And so these beings interact with each other and wake themselves up to themselves. And then that, over many, many, many years, that the consciousness, the aliveness, the intelligence innate to that creation, to that life form, will begin to awaken. And it will develop, if you will, after a certain point, it develops an impulse to sort of move and express itself more and to grow and so it starts to get ready for what they distinguish as the second density stage of consciousness. Such as animals and plants. Things begin to move. And after a certain point, an entity such as an animal becomes self-aware. It becomes aware of itself as different from its environment, as different from its pack. It develops an individuated awareness, usually in pets, for example. That's why they hang out with humans, which is our third density life form. Because we give them names, we give them attention, we give them affection, we punish them, we reward them, etc. So they develop a very acute sense of individuality that a pack of wolves doesn't have the opportunity to generate to the same extent. Or an ant colony. But the pet that you single out from its pack, you take care of it. You heighten its self-consciousness because you're self-conscious. You're a third density manifestation. You are able to be aware of yourself. And that's really where the spiritual journey begins, the conscious spiritual journey of an individual mind-body-spirit complex. And then in fourth density, you begin to, I'm very, very quickly breezing through this. In fourth density, or when you become ready for fourth density, you are aware of the universal nature of everything, the interconnectedness. Your heart is open. There's a deep love, a deep passion for being alive, for existing. There's a sense of understanding and compassion that has deepened, and you can begin to feel the love of existence, the bliss, the connectedness of existence. And then when that love becomes sufficient, if you will, you start to seek the ways of light. You start to turn more within, less outside of yourself, so to speak. It's less about your environment, it's less about creating things, it's less about interacting with other beings, and it's more about becoming self-sufficient and masterful in your energies, in your consciousness, in your thoughts, in your ability to project yourself into places and times and experiences. Kind of like the typical image of the yogi meditating, being able to see anywhere on the planet, being able to be self-sufficient, not need any food. It's kind of like that. Becoming self-sufficient, becoming the source of light itself, getting to know light. And then when that's sufficiently imbued in the entity's consciousness or spirit, it starts to crave or desire the understanding of unity or sixth density, where it begins to harmonize or balance the newly gained wisdom and sufficiency, seeing that all is perfect as it is, and that everything is within oneself. One doesn't really need anything from outside, in a sense. Now one wants to balance that again with love, with compassion, with being of service. And then when that has reached such a high level of precision, vibration, perfection, if you will, perfected balanced entity of love and light, just buzzing, like basically being light, unified, fully aware of the unity of the one infinite creator with self and other self. Then when that reaches a high enough level of vibration, if you will, or then the entity begins to desire to lose itself in the stream of all that is. The individuated self, which has sort of attained a perfected enlightenment as far as it can as an individual, craves that river, that purified, totally clean, distilled water river, now desires to merge back with the ocean. And so its process of letting go of its memory as its identity begins. Or seventh density, which is the returning of the water to the ocean, the reunification of the individual with the all that there is, with the I, sense. So the fastest way, in a sense, to increase that capacity, it's a seventh density teaching to rest as the I am. To know God in all that is, to know the God isness, I consciousness in all that is. To know oneself as one with all that is, to the point where one's individual memory doesn't matter anymore. One's identity shifts from the individual journey to being one with all that is, in essence. To be the awareness, the essence, the isness, the substratum of all that is, more so than one is the individual operating the mind and the body. And then when that reaches what Ra describes as sufficient spiritual mass, the phenomenon that results, my interpretation of it, is something akin to the black hole phenomenon, where literally the mass, the weight, the density of spirit, of consciousness that's infused in that reality is so high, its awareness of unity so high that it can no longer maintain a separate reality. It can no longer maintain creation, because the realization of that consciousness of oneness undermines the need for form and diversity and separation, because it's one. So when that reaches sufficient spiritual mass, it's like all the structures and the entirety of that universal consciousness coalesces back into the one infinite source, or the absolute. And at that point, the Creator has rediscovered itself, you could say, from a completely new angle of evolution, of expression, of self-reflection. So it's then simultaneously the absolute, the infinite, the formless, but also it has, quote-unquote, learned, if you will. So its next creation, its next octave of densities can contain that which has been learned. But that's done by the consciousness, that's done by the I. It's not really done by the one at its absolute level. At its absolute level, it's beyond any form, any manifestation, any consciousness as we know it. It's intelligent infinity, but it's not active yet. That's where God comes in. That's where the creator principle comes in. That's where the consciousness principle comes in. So it seems like the creator wants to know itself and reflect on itself. And less philosophically and more directly, my own direct experience with being at the threshold of consciousness versus the absolute. The experience is very much that it's like you need the I am to know that you're not the I am. You need the beingness, the universality, the isness. You need the isness of creation. And at the higher levels, it becomes a mirror for you to see yourself, your facelessness. It's almost like you can only know something that's truly formless, qualityless, faceless, and absolute once you've gone through all the different possibilities of faces and forms and qualities that you can, having arrived at the great unity of it all, the resolution of that diversity, and then in the vibrancy of that resolution of the entire journey of having seen all the faces and forms and qualities that could ever possibly be. Now, you know that you're none of that. And based on that information, you can begin to know yourself as not everything else. So it's in the mirror of the evolution that you see yourself at that level. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. Do you struggle sometimes in the dream, being flesh and bone?
The dream struggles sometimes. Yes. The dream will always struggle. Any questions about what I explained earlier today?
Hello, Bentinho.
Hello.
How about intuition and the world?
Sorry?
How about intuition and the world?
How about it? What's your question? How about
Because
an apple?
everything we are aware of in the world starts with a thought. But what if you come at a place or...
Do you have a question about this? I don't want any of your questions, I don't want any of your information to be infused in the topic of this retreat right now. So I would love for you to stick to the program. So
I think it is.
Then it's probably not. Do you have a very specific question about Trust me, I've had this 100 million times, 9 out of 10 times. You misjudge yourself. Because it's something you maybe want to ask or it's fascinating to you. But try to stick to this process because I want to lead you guys into some guided meditations later. I just want you to have a clear understanding of this context. I'm not interested in you, who you think you are, and anything along those lines. So do you have a question about the mechanics of what has been explained?
I still say yes.
Okay, let's give it a shot.
So experiencing the world starts with a thought.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How about if you experience that world, but you have, for example, very strong feeling
Mm-hmm.
or a certain knowing that you have been somewhere before or that you have seen someone before. So it's not. So there is something you interact with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about thinking, or it's not that you thought about it, but it's you have a very strong sense that there is something here, not knowing what it is, or telling you, or
Mm-hmm. So why can't that happen inside the dream?
I know it's happening inside the dream, but what's the difference between that thought? Well, there's actually no difference then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same. It's all thought basically, but it's not all verbal thought. You could distinguish there's levels of thought, depths of thought, but ultimately you could say the whole creation is a thought of the
Yes.
creator. And that's what you really realize when you start to intuit the absolute, and the entire universe becomes empty of substance. And you really realize that none of this has ever actually existed. It's never had any substance. From that point, you see that truly everything is thought into awareness. And it seems like it's thought into being, or it seems like it has beingness, but it just exists as the perception that it is. Meaning, there is no actual substance to the things I'm perceiving other than the perception, the consciousness that is generating that perception, including matter and physicality and timelines interchanging and things having happened before and intuition. Those are all part of the dream. Doesn't make it bad, but they're part of the dream. So there's no difference. There's no paradox in that way. You're just using a different level of thought to analyze things that are manifested by different thoughts, or that appear to be due to different thoughts. It's all consciousness. It's all consciousness and intelligent energy, if you will, shaping into forms due to this consciousness or inside this consciousness. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
Thank you.
it's like in your dream at night. You can have a verbal thought in your dream at night, and suddenly you can run into someone and you feel in your dream you've already known them for a long time, or you have a different intuition, or something intense happens. It's still all inside the dream. Any questions for clarification, specifically on what I've already discussed?
I was wondering if you can explain again about the difference between being and consciousness, because I'm a bit confused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a little difficult for the mind to grok this, so you got to just kind of drop in and experience it. But when the mind tries to make that distinction, it does get confused usually. Maybe this helps. You can get a sense of consciousness. That consciousness is, right? Okay. You can get a sense of being. and there is consciousness in, as, and of that being. So it's like two sides of the same coin. They're inseparable. They cannot be separated in that way.
I think that's where I got confused.
Hmm.
'Cause they were taken apart.
Right. Well, it's just a way to. It's just a feeling difference. For some people, it works better to sort of go with the sense of I am being. For others, it feels clearer to notice that one is conscious. But that consciousness and that isness is the same. The beingness, the existence, and the consciousness and the bliss is the same thing.
Okay. But then why is consciousness with the painter and the dreamer and painting with the being?
Just so that it works with the analogy of the dream, the dreaming. The process of dreaming is being. You could say being is time. Consciousness is time. So yeah, you could interchange them. You could say the painter is the being and the painting is the consciousness. It doesn't really matter too much. I could simplify it in a different way. Ah. Okay, I'll keep it simple. So this is the consciousness slash beingness, same thing. Inseparable. It's the isness. It's the root of all of this. So the practice consists of beginning to spend more time on this side, more time than you have anyway, and a little bit less time being focused on the dream. So this is the dreamer, and this is the dream, or the painter and the painting. It's really that simple. And then ultimately you realize that this too, you will begin to sense that all of this is part of the dream. It exists inside the dreamer. And then the dreamer itself will be able to be transcended. So the living more here turns this into more of a lucid dream, whereas awakening from this really makes you wake up from the dream. And what happens to the dream when you wake up from it? It disappears, basically. It's seen as not real, yes. So every time you practice presence or awareness and consciousness, the dream is infused with greater clarity, with greater energy, with greater brightness, with greater lucidity. But you're still dreaming. You still feel like you are part of the dream. It still feels like you're inside the dream or you're part of the dream. And more that shifts to, instead of being inside the dream, it feels like you are the dream, the entirety of it. You are the essence, you're the dreamer, and everything happens inside the dreamer, due to the dreamer. Therefore, you start to feel the oneness of everything. And then that oneness, that feel, that isness, that universal beingness disappears or is transcended. It's used as a mirror for the truly absolute infinite formless to see itself in contrast to. So you start asking yourself, like, am I aware of this godness, this isness, this beingness that contains everything? Or is it aware of me? It's one way to do it. Ask yourself that question and you begin to realize that, oh, wait a second, there's a me before the I. And just to stay in that awareness, like, oh, there's a me that knows the I awareness, beingness, consciousness that includes all perceptions that have ever happened. But what's important to realize first, this kind of goes over most of your heads at the moment. What we have to do first is understand the purification process of purifying the I. Because before you do that, you can't really jump from here. You can't really jump from an associated state where the I is associated with forms like body, mind, world, time, space, being inside of a universe, all that stuff. That first needs to be purified so that you can really know God. God is the isness, the I, the consciousness. At first it feels to be individual, but only because you're filtering it through a body. You've for so long bumped into objects that you think the I am is inside your head or something. That your awareness, that your consciousness is inside your head, and that the body is still inside the world. So there's the real world, then there is the real body that comes out of that world, and then inside that body you have awareness, and you're resting as awareness. But that's only because you've got it switched around. You've believed in the illusion so much that you forget that the I am is actually the source of the body and the world and the mind. So it's a complete reversal process. It's quite profound, and that's what takes effort or dedication. Now, if you have a lot of desire for that, it won't require a lot of effort, or it won't feel heavy anyway. It'll feel like your joy, like you want to, like you're curious, an explorer of consciousness, the nature of reality, the nature of yourself. So we'll get into that after a short break in a bit. Are there any more questions about this morning's session so far?
Hi.
Hey.
Just to be sure, because there are so many words, beingness, consciousness, isness, the creator, it's the I sense, no? Or is it the absolute?
Yes.
The I sense.
Yep. That's all the I sense.
Just to be sure.
Well,
Okay.
the creator can be used both as the absolute and as the... If I'm referring to the creator as the principle of the intelligence, the consciousness that creates the universes and the densities and all that, then it's the God, it's the I.
Yes, clear.
But sometimes I just refer to the one infinite creator as the absolute too. So it's a little vague. Maybe
No, I know, it's just words, but still...
I'll clean it up at some point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but everything, consciousness, beingness, clarity, love, light, isness, God, creator principle, energy, all that stuff is part and
Universe.
parcel of the I.
Universe? Or?
Universe, well, the universe is a manifestation or a projection of the I. The I is the essence of the universe. The I is the essence of everything. It's literally the isness in all appearances. It's the light that shines through the filter of the individual's minds and then turns into the grand illusion. But the essence of the grand illusion, even in manifestation, like if you're watching a projector, a movie projected on a screen in cinemas, you're watching forms and shapes and colors and things seemingly interacting, but none of that exists as anything but light. That's why it's an illusion. And you realize that all of creation is like that. Everything, including your feeling of I exist. It's nothing but light. It's nothing but like a projection. But what remains is even greater, like it's the true, absolute self. But first, in order to do that, we rest as the light, the source of the variety. There's all this variety, right? And that develops a mind, a body, an ego, and all that struggle. But then we go back to the simplicity, the unity of the light that makes up everything, which you can directly experience because it's part of what you are. It's a manifestation of what you are. And it's that sense of I. It's the most direct path, most likely.
Thank you.
Okay. But yes, consciousness, beingness, I am, God, those are all synonymous. Every once in a while they'll have a different context depending on what I'm explaining, but overall they all mean that same direct experience before you're thinking about anything, before you're having any thoughts. You can have thoughts, but that which is before it. It's that sense of isness. Now first it feels like an individual. First it feels like it's over here in your head or in your heart or in your body or right behind your head or but as you go on, and that I'll explain it after we. And then, so I'll explain that principle. I think that's all we'll have time for today, which is good. I mean, you're already oversaturated anyway. So, but I'll explain that as experientially as I can, so you really get to lock onto it, so you can practice it. That's why this is important. It is important to have the intellectual information. It is important to understand it. Otherwise, you hear it once and it works, but then you don't know how to replicate it. So it is quite valuable to have a map of this, so you can always go back to it, when you're caught up in intellect and mind. So I'll explain the purification of the I. Then we'll do a guided meditation. That's probably the end of today. And then tomorrow I'll get into the journey of it, or the progression of it, the practice of it, the grind, and understanding that process, and how that relates to how much you want it versus how much you don't want it, and how it's very adjustable. There's something there for everyone. If you want just a tiny little bit of it, then you can have that tiny little bit of it. If you want the full enchilada, you can have the full enchilada. Cool. So, what time is it now? Let's see. Almost 5. So yeah, just take a short pee break. Let's be back in. Let's be back in 20 minutes. Okay, instead of 30. So 10 minutes past 5. We can be back here. That'd be great.